Welcome to Chapter 4 Overview with Mr. Rodman. I'm Mr. Rodman, and this is Political Culture and Ideology. Now, please keep in mind, disclaimer, this is not meant to be a replacement for the reading or the hard work that you are doing on your reading guide and concept cards. This is meant to be a supplement to those resources, so definitely check those out. Make sure you're reading, checking out the important aspects of the details. This is meant to help bridge that gap and or to help you refresh the information that you've gotten from there, or to help delineate that information. But at any rate, it is not meant to replace it. So please make sure you're reading. That is a part of Living the Five, and that's what it's all about. Okay, so political culture and ideology on Chapter 4. You're going to be able to answer a lot of these questions by the end of this chapter in terms of how you can address what the average citizen knows. And this is important because we talk a lot about political culture versus political ideology and beliefs and ideas and kind of the differences between the two. And hopefully by the end of the chapter, you'll be able to figure that out. So think about this for a second, and you can pause the video if you need more time. When you hear the word conservative, what comes to your mind? When you hear the term liberal, what comes to your mind? And when you hear the term libertarian, what comes to your mind? Are there examples that you can visualize that help you in better understanding those three terms? Because we're going to take a closer look at all three of them here in this chapter. So let's start off by talking about political culture. This is kind of the things that we can agree on as a society. This is bigger than just our own belief system, our own ideals in terms of what we believe. And so think of it this way: who doesn't value liberty? Who doesn't value freedom? If you asked people, and pollsters do this all the time, do you value liberty? Do you value freedom? Of course people value liberty. Of course they value freedom. Who would say I don't value freedom? The idea here is that they're cultural ideas that we can agree on. And how we regulate that or how we legislate that is where we start to have a lot of differences. So political culture are looking at a lot of the things, the belief systems and whatnot, that we can share, that we share as a society. We believe in liberty. We believe in freedom. And this is important because it's something that we hold on to in terms of connecting all the relationships of all of the people across the country to each other, to being a part of an American society. And that is important here in terms of our values. Because when it comes to how do we legislate liberty and freedom and security and whatnot, then it gets much more dicey. And you can see a lot of splits and shifting positions on how much or how little government involvement there should be, according to your own personal point of view. And that does change over time, with context, in terms of the legislative part of it, the ideologies. But the idea of political culture is that we can all agree on the idea that we live in a country that values freedom. We value liberty as part of that societal norm. And so we have a Protestant work ethic. Magleby talks about a Protestant work ethic. This idea that we all share beliefs in hard work is going to save us. The hard work is going to help us to be better people to our neighbors, to our kids, to our society. And there's nothing that we can't do if we don't put our mind to it and work hard in order to develop those resources. And so this kind of goes back to political culture, goes back to the founders. If you remember the philosophers and the social contract with John Locke, and the idea that these natural rights come from a higher being, a higher power. They're not just rights that government gives to us, but they're given to us by a higher power, and as a result of that, we create government, as Hobbes told us, to essentially protect us from ourselves in a lot of cases, from our neighbors, because In some cases, Hobbes has even said this. Society can be brutal. It can be very brusque. It can be very dog eat dog, and survival of the fittest starts to take hold. But government helps to keep that in check. And then Montesquieu talked about how we separate the powers in order to keep government in check. And all of this stems from this idea of having natural rights endowed by our Creator. And with that, we can take these values and we can share them across society. This idea of limited government, of individualism, of equality of opportunity. Who wants to say that we don't value these, like free enterprise, the ability you work hard and you earn money and you create an idea, and once you pay your taxes, you should be able to keep it, right? That is a core American value. And so we see a lot of these that we can agree on when it comes to political culture. And respect is a part of that. Our civic duty to vote and take an active role in what we'll talk about as exercising our internal and external efficacy in knowing how government works and how we can take part of it. One of the reasons the Maryland General Assembly requires we have a government course that students have to take and pass in order to get a Maryland diploma is a part of trying to instill that efficacy, that importance of knowing how government works and how we can take part in it. And that is a part of our political culture. It's a part of what shapes us into the society that we are. Where we start to be socialized in those ideals and those belief systems is really through socialization. Political socialization is this process in which we're getting our ideas, we're getting our belief system, we're getting our ideals in terms of what we value and what we value more than others. And so we're getting this through our family. You imagine that until you're a teenager, and even then, you're spending more time with your family than anybody else. You're spending time at school. So you're spending time with your friends, with teachers, with educators. When you go off to college, you're spending time with colleagues, and you're spending time with professors and thought leaders that are really addressing the issues of the day. Your religion has an impact on this, and then of course the media, and we'll lump social media into that as well. We are socialized through these aspects of our political belief system, and they help to shape us very much so in the way that we are and that we believe. And we'll talk more about this later, but think of it like a snowflake. In science class, we talk about how snowflakes are all different if you put them under a microscope, because they are basically a result, a factor of all of the environmental factors that have weighed in on that snowflake as it falls to the ground. And every one is completely different from all the others. And why is that? Because of their socialization. And so this is what makes us different. We value that culture, but again, that political ideology is shaped by how we are socialized in society. And we start to see that here through these influential groups like family and media and school. So as we go through our lives, we're going to be shaped and influenced, and our environment is going to be impacted by the various people that we come into contact with, the various situations that we come into contact with, the events that happen in our lives, and all of these are going to shape us into the different snowflake that we are from everybody else, and that is what shapes us in terms of that political ideology as we start to move in that direction. Going from a teenager to a senior citizen, there's a lot of different paths that people take in order to get through that in the 50 plus years that they are a part of those life cycle changes. It changes voting patterns. It changes how their belief system is shaped. If they're spending more time in unemployment lines and trying to get a job that they can't, that's going to shape who they are. If they have an easier time and they really didn't struggle and they had a job and they worked a 9-to-5 for 40 years, that's going to shape the environmental factors in terms of who they are. And all of those are going to impact our political ideology and our belief system. Religion is an important part of that, and how that shapes us into who we are. You're spending a lot of time with people that are of the religion that you are. You're spending a lot of discussions and conversations about those things that are important and how that shapes your particular viewpoint on issues, on those words we talked about at the beginning: conservative, liberal, and libertarian. And so it's important to keep those in mind as we move forward. And then we can see that religion is a very important part for a lot of people. And that is changing in terms of, and it's kind of an ebb and flow, but that changes as people experience different environmental factors or context as to the religion they're growing up with, what they're seeing, learning, feeling, thinking, experiencing as part of life. All of that can have an impact here as well. So I revert back to what Magleby talks about with the Protestant work ethic. This was a very Puritan point of view. The idea that you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you can work hard and get ahead, and that you can do that if you really try. And that has influenced a lot of our capitalist society that we have today based on that. We look at the Google guys, we look at Steve Jobs, we look at Bill Gates, we look at a lot of the people who've really, invented all kinds of gadgets that we use and different technologies, and they've benefited from that. And after they've paid their fair share of taxes, they, according to the tax code, they have been able to benefit from that and take those profits and do what they wanted with it. And that is part of our culture. It is part of our Protestant work ethic to work hard and keep those profits and use that in the way that we see fit. There's a lot of drivers of religion around political change. That religion has a huge impact on how people vote, on how people take active participation in elections and in electing our leaders, and that has an important aspect of the religious political affiliation that we see today. So we look at culture as being a part of a lot of this history that's kind of shaped us into where we are, but we've also seen some revolution over time. We know that the founders framers did not like what King George was doing. They didn't like what the troops were doing. Think Bills of Attainder, think ex post facto laws, need I go on. And so we became a much more adversarial culture. Where we didn't really trust authority. And so we wanted to, in the lines of Montesquieu, we wanted to separate the powers of government so that we didn't have to worry about all the political aspects of government getting too big for the power that we have given them, trying to usurp their power and expand it to areas that weren't really what the founders and framers intended. So we have a lot of lawsuits, as we talked about in the last unit when we talked about the judicial branch and the court system. We have a lot of lawsuits in the country that are really based on these beliefs and applying these beliefs to our political culture. Is it really important that we look at these aspects of our society? And so religion has an impact, our context has an impact, environmental factors have an impact. All of these impact our society as a whole. Equality of opportunity versus equality of results. We saw this with civil rights and civil liberties. The idea of not everybody gets to start from the same place. Not everybody is getting to see the game from where they're standing. And so sometimes you need to help some people out. Sometimes they need they need a leg up. They may need a little a better start. President Lyndon Johnson said education is the great equalizer because it provides that equality of opportunity to help them get started. But there are a lot of aspects of government that help with equality of results. How to swim, in this example, isn't going to really help her in this case. When she doesn't have a life raft and she's drowning in the waves. So there are different aspects of how we go about, and that's where legislation comes in. That's where people we elect as our leaders, consent of the governed, to pass laws over us that then we have to follow, and we abide by those rulings. We abide by that legislation because we've elected those people. And if we don't like what they've done, then we elect other people when the next election comes around, to then be our leaders and pass laws that we then have to follow. And all of that is important because it's a part of our American dream. It's our ideal of life, liberty, and property, or life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? Private property, a very important part, so important that Jefferson changed it from pursuit of happiness, or from property to pursuit of happiness, a broader point of view of that American dream. But property was very important. They really saw government as its role was to protect private property. And the reason they wanted a government was to protect the people from anyone trying to take over their property. And sometimes this conflicts. How much is too much in terms of government intervention? Some people say a lot less. Some people say a lot more. And that's where we have elections and we discuss these issues and we debate them and we really talk them out and trying to find where our happy medium is. What is it that we as a society believe? We're very majoritarian in that respect. We value what the majority believes. And if you weren't in the majority, then you need to fight better next time and try and win over some of the people so that you can be the majority. And so that's why we have a lot of the back and forth in the Congress today, because of that majoritarian swing, if you will, from the purple districts that swing back and forth in one election and then back to the other side in the next election, all in an effort to try and find what are the values that we hold dear and how do we legislate those? How do we take that political culture and apply it to our beliefs and legislate accordingly? And that's really important because it is a value that we have, very much so. Okay, so you get the idea on the American dream, I think, with this life, liberty, and property, or the pursuit of happiness. We've seen that change over time. You look at context with the industrialization, the Gilded Age. Look at the Great Depression and the New Deal. War, times of war change how we view these sorts of things. That can have a huge impact in terms of where we are and how we feel about laws and legislation in order to either protect our freedoms or to curb them, depending on the issue. But what should our role be in this economy? Well, we're going to talk a lot about this. We have a chapter coming up on economic policy making, and the role in the economy is very mixed market, what we call a mixed market economy or semi-regulated. And this is because we are focusing on an economy that is really with some government intervention, but very laissez-faire. Get government out of the way, let business do its thing. Government steps in when needed. A lot of times when it comes to safety, when it comes to protection, and we talked about that in the bureaucracy, right? When does government get involved? Usually when it's a threat to the health or the harm of our citizens, of our society. And that can have an impact in terms of the economy. And so we have what's called a mixed market, because really the only time government gets into the process of regulating businesses is when it comes to that safety and security that is threatened. So there's been a lot of mistrust of government over the ages, and we can see there's been a steady decline of that trust. Yeah, there's some ebbs and flows. We saw after 9/11, all of a sudden people trusted government again because they wanted that protection. They wanted to give up a little more liberty in order to be able to fly on a plane without having to worry if the plane's going to blow up or if somebody's going to hijack it. The ideas of trusting government in terms of, we saw this during the pandemic, right? All of a sudden we all need to get these shots, these vaccines, in order to protect us so that we can develop herd immunity and be able to come back out into society again and go to movies and restaurants and theaters and cruises and vacations. And so there is kind of a back and forth, but we've definitely seen a decline from where we were in the 60s. We have not revisited that peak by any means in terms of trust in government. And there's a lot of factors that weighed in on that. I mean, you think about Watergate, you think about war along the way, Vietnam, and a lot of other factors that have impacted that trust over the years. The Clinton administration and the sex scandal there, and then fast forward to the war in Afghanistan and the invasion of Iraq. We've seen time and time again where people decline to trust government because they can't really believe in everything that the government has going on at that particular time. And so that leads to not a change in what we value as freedom or liberty, but how we legislate that liberty, and just as we talked about in the beginning. So what do we do with that? We really look at this chapter and then kind of transition to the ideologies. The focus here is on what do we believe and how do we legislate those beliefs? How do we take what we believe about what's going on in the world and legislate that? And how do we put that into words in terms of laws, in terms of actions that can protect us from each other in a lot of cases? And so I want you to think about this. What causes a person to have a political ideology, to have a belief? Well, and again, in a lot of cases, environment can have an impact on that. So what environments can impact a person's political ideology? Whether they're conservative, liberal, or libertarian, or even centrist along those lines. How does that impact their values? How does that impact what they believe in terms of what should be legislated and what shouldn't be legislated? Where government should get out of the way. And that has an impact here too. So ideology is this set of ideas, and it's constantly changing because it's constantly evolving towards the environment that we're in and the experiences that we're having. And that is impacting the values that we have and how government has a role in protecting those values. How do we protect liberty? Some people say we need a lot more security and we need a lot more government involvement. Some people say in order to protect that liberty, we need a lot less security, a lot less government interaction. We need to put more onus on individual thinking. And so those are two very different views, and there's a lot of ones in between. And the idea is, how do we use those thoughts, those ideas, and legislate it? How do we legislate that into our society to make a more perfect union, and to make this this Constitution, this America of, by, and for the people? And that's really where these ideologies play. So we're going to look at three different ideological perspectives. There's the conservative, there's the liberal, and the libertarian. So, and we're going to delve a little deeper into each one of these, and we've got some examples here. Again, in some cases we're generalizing, so don't be upset about, oh, I can't believe you lumped them into that category or whatever. Again, we're making generalizations in order to be able to talk about these in terms of those ideologies. It doesn't mean every person fits into that framework, and it doesn't mean that every person who has some of those characteristics is that type of ideology, is that ideology on the spectrum. But the idea is we're making some generalizations in a political science context in order to be able to discuss them. Okay, so notice conservatives favor less government, more defense, and traditional values. Okay, so they do respect authority. You see a lot of the back the blue here in conservative circles. Liberals tend to favor a more active government, regulate the economy, promote equality, really focused on a lot of government programs to help equalize the playing field, as I talked about before, giving people things like welfare checks and food stamps and things to help them get a leg up so that they have an equal opportunity. And then libertarian is very much trying to get government out of it. Very limited government here. Get government out of that picture so that we can focus on the individual rights and freedoms that we have and hold dear. Okay, so a liberal ideology, you may remember, usually focuses on less defense spending. Now, there are always those liberals, liberal Democrats that are going to be a war hawk, and there are fewer of them. But the idea is that liberals, which tend to be Democrats in today's political world, they favor less defense spending. They also favor protecting the rights of the accused, especially when it comes to the Bill of Rights. Think about the right to remain silent. Think about the right to a jury, a trial of a speedy trial, but a trial of a jury of your peers. and the right to have a warrant before someone searches your home. All of those types of things, very important to a liberal ideology. Government shouldn't be regulating private matters. Think abortion, think same-sex marriage, think again a warrant before they invade your home. And in order to get into your home, they need a warrant signed by a judge. And they support a more active role in government education, in providing that public education that is paid for by the government. They do favor total separation of church and state in most cases. They oppose vouchers because that takes money away from public schools, and they favor social liberty. This idea of society focusing on freedom and liberty as a whole. So again, it's the social aspects of that freedom, of that liberty, of that security, but having government's role more active in supporting that security and that freedom. Then we get to the conservatives, which tend to favor more defense spending. They do focus more on punishing crime. The idea of increasing the police presence and having a more active police presence. Again, as I said earlier, back the blue, right? And then really protecting traditional values. And we hear this a lot. Family values, traditional values, protecting individual families from individual intrusion in order to protect someone's individual freedom. And so this means less of a role of the federal government, more focused on states and the power of state governments as opposed to the federal government. You may remember in the Dobbs decision, the idea was to overturn Roe v. Wade, which allowed abortion in all 50 states. But the Dobbs decision did not outlaw abortion. It only took away, the national freedom to have an abortion across all 50 states and basically put it in the hands of the state governments. That's why Maryland passed a law, a constitutional amendment to enshrine in their constitution the right to an abortion in each individual state. So it's not saying that they didn't have government involvement. It said that they're pushing that, think devolution, they're pushing that to the states and let the states handle those types of issues. So less federal government in that respect. Education is a great example. The Trump administration, President Trump has said this. He wants to get rid of the Department of Education. This is a great example of a conservative ideological belief. And the reason for that is because they think that state governments and local governments should be handling educational issues. Who better to determine what your child should be taught than in your community? And the Supreme Court has backed that up in a lot of cases in terms of community standards. You know, what is the definition of obscenity? We know it when we see it. Think the Miller test, the SLAPS test, all those things that we've seen in terms of court rulings along the way in the last unit was really about having that community aspect, and in this one, conservatives believe that it is local government and state government that really should be handling that, and not the federal government in that respect. Vouchers, they do support them because they support expanding education, including religious schools that are supported in that respect. They are less concerned with those Establishment Clause issues, so you see a lot of support for vouchers, charter schools, I think is kind of what we call it today, and more along those lines. They do favor government involvement when it comes to providing social order. So yes, they do favor a right to limit abortion and same-sex marriage and issues. Traditional conservatives are looking at that in that respect. So that's more the conservative ideology. We go to libertarian. If you're thinking social and economic issues, libertarians tend to support less government in all of those aspects. So where liberals tended to favor government involvement in economic issues, think food stamps and welfare checks and equality of opportunity, where conservatives did not. They did not favor government involvement in economic issues. But conservatives valued government involvement in social issues like abortion and same-sex marriage and prayer in schools, where liberals would say, well, we don't want those things. We don't want government involvement in the social issues. They shouldn't be regulating same-sex marriage or abortion or prayer in schools. They should be regulating economic issues. like higher taxes in order to address those welfare payments and food stamps and unemployment checks to help people get back on their feet. So very different point of view. But libertarians tend to side with whichever side has less government. So in this case, libertarians favor the conservatives on economic issues because they don't want government involvement in economic issues, but they favor the liberal approach to social issues because libertarians don't believe government should get involved in those social issues either. So here you have libertarians that really want as little government as possible in our lives. So they favor liberals and conservatives on different aspects, but all in support of getting government minimized in our everyday lives as far as that goes. So one more distinction here before we then wrap it up. This idea of traditional versus social conservatives. Traditional tend to be ones that favor less government in business. So they're very pro-business. They don't want government regulation interfering with businesses' ability to be able to hire people and fire people and create new businesses and create new products. And that's a very traditionally conservative approach. Get government out of the way so business can do its thing. We can grow. We can hire more people. We create jobs. We create a standard of living for families that then they can use to support their own. And social conservatives are more based on religious values. So here's where we see the abortion. Here's where we see the same-sex marriage, the aspects of morality and affirmative action. The social conservatives not supportive of those issues. And again, we've done a lot here to generalize, so I don't want to say everybody falls into that category. Please don't go away thinking that. But the idea is that social conservatives have those tendencies to favor outlawing abortion, favor outlawing same-sex marriage, and providing prayer in schools because religion is a part of their political ideology. It's a part of their cultural belief system as part of that. So some of the criticisms of liberalism: too much government, conservatism, not enough government. Right? We see liberalism is too focused on government providing the resources to get back on your feet, where conservatives too much of get back on your feet, don't let government get in the way, and don't let government slow you down because it's just going to keep you from doing that. So there are criticisms on both fronts. Liberals, much more socially, they want government involvement, want less government involvement, but economically, they do want more government involvement to help level the playing field. Conservatives, just the opposite. They want more social involvement in government to regulate behavior, but they don't want it in economic issues regulating business behavior. And that's probably the biggest differences along those lines. Now, socialism versus communism. Again, this is just kind of an aside in the course exam description, but important to note because these tend to get kind of morphed together in a lot of conversations. Notice socialism is all about public ownership, and this means that there is a government that is, controlling production. What do we produce? How do we produce it? For whom? And the public is essentially owning that process. Where communism is the idea that the people are exercising those resources. Land, capital, it's all collectively owned, but it's organized by the people and not government in that respect. So just a couple of distinctions there, because in socialism, and we kind of saw this with the former Soviet Union. Communism, we kind of see this with China and the Chinese Communist Party, right? It's people that represent the issues that they're addressing, that they're using, that they're legislating. And so that's important to keep in mind as we look at the role of government. In socialism, we see that between socialism and communism, we see that that's kind of the differences between the two. And then just wrapping up libertarianism, this idea of get government out of our lives, they would just want minimal government. And so they agree with liberals when it comes to social issues, get government out of our life. They agree with conservatives on economic ones, get government out of our business. And that really is the libertarian point of view, is to minimize government. Really, that second bullet there really says it all. Minimal government. That's probably all we needed on that slide, and we could have been good to go. Okay. Rule of law, don't forget, no one's above the law. And the idea is that what is that law and how do we determine it? That is all based on who we elect to be our leaders, to pass laws over us, that then we have to follow. That's consent of the governed to the end. That is consent of the governed. Okay, so let's look at the Democratic coalition. These voters, and we'll get into more of this in the next chapter on demographics, but notice Democratic Party participants tend to be younger voters. They tend to be more diverse. They are women, many of times people of color. They are LGBTQ members of the community. As far as religion goes, tend to be more Jewish or Muslim. A lot of them either have less than high school or post-grad education, meaning they've gone on beyond high school and either gotten a bachelor's or a master's or a PhD or whatever. They tend to be in more urban settings, and the income is usually less than $50,000. There are always exceptions, of course, and we're going to generalize, but the idea is that tends to be kind of the demographic scope of those in the Democratic Party tent, if you will. And you can see the issues that they supported in past elections: increasing social welfare programs, supporting gun control measures, very pro-choice, and very liberal ideological positions. Now we flip over to the Republican Party coalition. These voters, and again, we're generalizing, but for the purposes of political science, we need to. So these tend to be older voters or middle-aged voters, a lot of them married with families in a lot of cases, white men, and they tend to be religious conservatives, a lot of them evangelicals or Christians. And again, there's a lot of other religions that are part of this as well. But again, we're generalizing. Incomes tend to be greater than $50,000. A lot of them from the South, the Midwest, and more the red states, if you will, more rural or suburban in those cases. Think Ohio, in Indiana, where they're more suburban, rural type areas. White collar workers, and a lot of veterans, of course, very patriotic, very supportive of the military and the police, the armed forces. They do tend to support increased defense spending. They are supportive of vouchers, and especially for charter schools or private schools. Definitely a big believer in cutting taxes and giving the money back to people so that they can spend it in the economy. They are very pro-life, which means they are very anti-abortion. They are very opposed to gun regulation, a very big believer in the Second Amendment, and they do oppose a lot of environmental regulations that they worry stifle business in terms of being able to compete fairly and freely among other nations with products that are out there, products, goods, and services. So that tends to be the those in the Republican Party tent. It is important to note that the policy making of the parties has kind of changed over the years. In the 30s up to almost the 70s, we saw a lot of Democratic Party domination, holding on to a lot of programs that were holding on to Congress, but also holding on to a lot of programs that were implemented at that time. Think New Deal, think post-World War II New Deal, Social Security, Fannie Mae, the FDIC to support people who put money in banks. The Civil Rights Act, of course, we talked about in the last unit. A lot of voting rights action, of course, Medicare, Medicaid, the education funding, national funding of education, which is the ESEA, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. That was signed by Lyndon Johnson. It's been reauthorized every year since then in the last 60 years. Through various Congresses, but it's always called a different name, but it's essentially the ESEA. And then a lot of expansion of civil rights along the way. Now, fast forward to 1980s and forward, we see a lot of increase in defense spending. We saw tax cuts in the 80s. We're seeing them again in the 2020s with the Trump administration. A lot of personal responsibility. And focus on the support of the military and police and the Patriot Act. A lot of Again, focusing on giving up some liberty for more security, that balance, that seesaw that we talked about before. So, again, not an entire generalization, but giving us a good sense of kind of where we are in the political spectrum. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these, but there are some really good slides if you want to check them out that can help you review on this chapter and provide a little more color commentary and details along the way. You can always take a look at the slides, or you can pause here and take a look at those questions that are out there. I'm really looking forward to the next chapter because we're talking about demographics, and then it'll be on to chapter 8. After that, we got 5 and 8 yet, where we look at the importance of polls and polling and getting people's information to be able to know how they vote, why they vote, and how we can better get them out to vote. This has been Mr. Rodman on the overview of Chapter 4. I hope you found it helpful. Live that 5, and I'll see you back here in Chapter 5.